Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be making a movie review for the movie Love Hurts, the action comedy currently out in theaters, starring Arianna Debose and Quan. I had a good time with this movie. Let's dive into it.
Modern movie review.
Okay, so right off the bat, with all of my movie reviews, I like to issue a little bit of a spoiler warning. I don't think this is a movie that can be ruined via spoilers, but if you already have your tickets and you're planning on going to watch it tonight or something, maybe click off of this and come back and watch it later so we can discuss it. That being said, I do want to talk about this movie. We're going to get in depth. Let's talk about it. The action, comedy, it does both of those parts well. I think that the action sequences are relatively well recorded. I like the fact that they do a little bit of things to kind of switch them up from action sequence to action sequence, because there probably is about like 20 different action scenes in this movie, and it definitely seems like something that could become redundant, but because they're doing things like following a specific prop throughout the entire fight sequence, there's some fun to be had with a lot of these, and I think that they did a good job of making them all stylistically a little bit different. Something in particular that I do really like about this film when it comes to the action side of things, Quan is playing a character who was in the business of killing people and is clearly out of that business. So during the first couple of fight sequences that he has, he's making a valiant effort to not actually hurt the people he's fighting, which I think adds a fun layer to it. And then as the movie progresses, he's kind of coming back into who he used to be, which is a big theme of this movie, is that you should be your true self, and hiding is never a good thing, which on the one hand I kind of liked, but on the other hand there are parts of it where it's just like he used to do something really terrible. He basically like changed himself and made himself a better person, and now they're trying to make him go back to being that terrible person. There's some elements of that does not work for me at all. But the whole concept of Ki Huan being this very gentle person who doesn't want to kill people, and then him having to become the person he dreads and actually have to hurt people and physically kill people, it's very interesting. I think that the way that they did it in this movie is well done. I think that Ki Huan did an incredible job acting that way because, like I said, he's a very layered character. Like in the beginning, he's very like, I'm going to protect people. I'm going to make sure that no one's actually dying on my watch. To he becomes, as his brother puts it, my monster, and he does some pretty evil things at the end of the movie, and it's pretty cool. I like the action sequences. Like I said, I think that the action is one of the best parts of this movie. And then we slide over to the comedy. I think that the comedy, for the most part, worked relatively well for me as well. I am a sucker for a movie that has a subplot that low-key does not need to be as explored as it is. I think is probably the best way to put it. And in this movie, when they're starting off, they have like the first couple like 10-15 minutes where Ki Huan's character Marvin is going around and he's just being a real estate agent, and he's taking people on tours, and he's having a really good time just being, this little tour guide, which, by the way, one of my favorite parts about the comedy, I'm going to get back to what I was saying in a second. One of the Property Brothers makes a cameo in this movie. I love the Property Brothers. That was awesome. I was really happy about that. But that being said, he's starting off as this very preppy guy who's like so excited to be a real estate agent, and he's giving people these tours and he loves his life. And then he calls his agent, and his agent's just like depressed, and she's like, I don't want to be doing this. I'm actually like miserable. I hate everything. And he's just like, what do you mean by everything? She's like, well, the job and life in general and this and that. And she's just like so like disappointed and down in the dumps. And it's a character that's like, okay, we're gonna see them for like 2 minutes in this movie, and then they're not gonna be a part of the movie any bit longer. And then every single time her character continued to show up, it was very entertaining to me because she ends up falling in love with a character named Raven, which in the action side of things, I probably should have talked about him, but we will get into him in a little bit. He is a killer who works for the bad guys in this movie, and he's also a poet, and he makes a lot of poetry, and he's one of the first people who fights Ki Huan. He fights him in his office at work, and Ki Huan obviously knocks him out, keeps him in his office because he doesn't really care. He needs to go take care of other business. And so later, the assistant goes into that room, realizes, oh my God, there's somebody knocked out in here. What the hell? Notices that he has a book full of poetry, and she starts reading it, and she falls in love with him. And that's an actual thing that this movie spends a lot of time and effort drawing out, this love story between the random assistant who's been depressed this entire time and this killer who writes poetry. And what's it called? There's a scene where she's like reading it out loud, and the guy wakes up, and it's like this very scary scene of like, oh my God, no, are they about to kidnap the assistant? What's about to happen? And instead he's just like, no one's ever appreciated my poetry before. And they have this like really awkward love moment. And I was like, that's funny. That's awesome. That's great. 20 minutes go by. We're actually dealing with the main story now. Ki Huan is like, trying to find Arianna Debose's character, or at this point he might have already found her. And they're trying to like, come up with a plan of how they're going to get at the bad guys, if they're even going to get at the bad guys. And you're so locked into what's going on with Ki Huan, and then it cuts back to the assistant and this killer poetry dude, and they're on like a really cute romantic date, and he's reading his poetry to her with candle lighting, and they're just like sitting there staring longingly through each other's eyes. It killed me. Every single time they came on screen, I was dying laughing, and I felt so bad for the people who were in my theater with me. I just thought it was so funny. It was so unnecessary, but it was so funny, and they just kept doing it. I thought that was a great bit. And I'm gonna be honest. I know I'm probably alone on this. I thought that was so funny that it actually made this movie very enjoyable to me. A lot of other people who are saying that this movie has way too much characters and way too much going on probably wants that entire subplot to be cut out. I thought it was the funniest part of this movie. I thought it was so great. But yeah, so to talk about Raven, though, the character who she falls in love with, he is a character who I think works really well in this movie. He's somebody who's evil, but he's a contract killer, so he doesn't actually work for the evil people. And because of that, it allows opportunities like at one point in the movie, Ki Huan is really wanting to still be a real estate agent, so he invites people into this house even though he knows dangerous people are after him. And then there ends up being a shootout at this house, and they kind of have to, Ki Huan looks at this Raven guy and he's just like, we can work together right now, please, we can work together, please, we need to get rid of these guys, please don't let them kill innocent people. And Raven's just like, you know what, yeah, sure. And it leads to this really cool team up action sequence with Ki Huan and this Raven character who has so many cool different weapons, and he's kind of like, he has an entire arsenal. He has a giant trench coat, bunch of weapons in the trench coat, weapons in his boots, weapons literally everywhere you could potentially hide a weapon. And I liked it. I thought that was a really cool character. I understand I haven't seen a lot of action movies, so that might be a very tropey thing, but it worked well for me. This guy's like 6'7", and he has a giant trench coat. And every time he does like cool kick flips and stuff like that, the trench coat just smoothly flows with him. Oh, it was satisfying. Oh, I loved it. I thought that was incredible. And that's just another part of the action choreography just being absolutely fantastic. They found out, hey, you can do flips. He's like, yeah, I can do flips. They do flips. Frick yeah, man. I thought that was great. Um, Other side plots, Marshawn Lynch and his weird partner, once again, it's a side plot that is so unnecessary to the movie, and it's something that I think is kind of funny. The actual bad guy and the other guy who's like kind of like the mole in the organization who's also a bad guy both get very little screen time, but then we get like 10 minutes with Marshawn Lynch and his partner is going through like a rough time with his girlfriend, and they're kind of like on a break, but it's Valentine's Day, so he's trying to like be romantic and kind of like, have a heart to heart moment with her. And the entire time, Marshawn Lynch is like giving this guy advice, and he's just like, here's how you're going to get your girl back. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. Everything's going to work out. It's going to be incredible. And it's such like a pointless part of the movie, but once again, sometimes that works for me, and the comedy of that was fantastic. Like, it kind of reminded me of the like bad guys from the Home Alone movie, how they were just like so stupid and over the top with how stupid they were. It was like that, and I enjoyed that. And another thing, for people who are fans of Marshawn Lynch who were like, oh my god, he's acting in this, he gets to yell beast mode at one point. And I was also really happy during the opening credits when his name came up, it was Marshawn in parentheses beast mode Lynch, and I was like, that's my guy. Yeah, I was pumped. I was excited for it. But yeah, overall, I had a good time with this movie. I feel like if you're going into this movie not expecting an incredible like plot, you're gonna love it. Like, the action is dumb and fun, the comedy is dumb and fun, and because this movie decided to be 83 minutes long, it's not like the plot is so boring that you're not gonna want to sit through it. It goes by quick, and it's nice. And for the most part, I think it actually is interesting enough. Like I mentioned, I don't think I mentioned it. Arianna Debose's character is essentially like the love interest for Ki Huan, which was a little weird on the aspect of like, I don't know the age difference there, but it feels wrong. Not gonna get too far into that, but that entire love story is like not very well established in this movie. And another thing about this movie that I was not a really big fan of, there's a lot of weird editing decisions where like a character will start like a very like meaningful conversation. Like, there's Sean Ashton is in this movie, and he plays somebody who's like the boss of Ki Huan's character, and at one point he gets kidnapped and like he knows he's gonna die, and he starts talking about all these incredible things about Ki Huan's character, and he's talking about how he's like the best man for the job, and he's always doing everything. He works his ass off. You can tell he's trying to pay retributions because he's done terrible things in the past and stuff like that. And it's this super long monologue talking about how awesome Ke Hu Huan is, and then it like cuts off randomly, and then it switches to a scene where Ke Hu Huan is talking about something completely different, and then it cuts to a scene where the bad guy is doing something completely different, and they just kept cutting off sentences when they're doing these transitions, and I'm like, is this supposed to be like flowing smoothly? Because it's not at all. And there was another scene like I'd mentioned the assistant. She starts reading the poems or whatever. At one point, she's leaving a voicemail kind of giving her like letter of resignation to Ki Hu Huan's character, and she's like, "But first, you have to listen to this poem." And she starts reading it out, and then it cuts to Ki Hu Huan, and he's waking up and he's disoriented, and like slowly the poem is fading out, and they don't let the poem finish. And I was like, "Is this poem important? Because you're setting it up like it's supposed to be important, but you're not letting it finish. What's happening?" They do that like 3 times throughout this movie, and it threw me off so much. It's okay. It's all right. I didn't want to know what the end of that saying sentence was going to be anyways. But yeah, that being said, that's pretty much everything I wanted to touch on in this video. For the most part, I had a good time with this movie. It is incredibly generic. If I had to give this movie a rating on a scale of 1 to 100, I'm going to give it a solid 71. It's solid. The action is fun enough. The comedy is fun enough. It is an insane amount of characters for how short the film is. And for the most part, there's no good character arcs or anything really to root for. But yeah, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow. Bow. Bow.